This is Success in Excess, where elite founders, lawyers, and clinic owners engineer success through strategy, scale, and systems. Powered by GrowthX.
Welcome back to Success in Excess, where vision meets velocity, powered by GrowthX, the ultimate growth partner for law firms. Ready to accelerate revenue and scale past 7 and 8 figures? We've supported over 20 law firms past 7 figures and another 8 more past 8 figures, with over $100 million in revenue through strategic marketing, automation, and client flow systems. If you're looking for a strategic partner in visibility, growth, and revenue acceleration, visit growthxmarketing.ai. Now, today's guest is one of the movers and shakers in the personal injury space. He's carved his own path, made his own journey to success, and is making waves all over Southern California. His name is Mark Kiran of Broadway Law. He's not only targeting Hispanic, Latino speaking demographics, he's also a great personal injury attorney that also handles both sides of the field. So without further ado, Mark Kiran, please introduce yourself and tell us what makes you one of the top personal injury attorneys in the field today.
Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on the podcast. I appreciate the invite. So when I started my firm, I decided that it would be a good idea to really niche down our practice and focus on my community. And the reason why is because I recognize that the Latino community, especially in Southern California, was really underserved. And, being from LA, having an office in downtown LA, I realized there was a huge opportunity for us to grow a law firm by focusing on the specific needs of our community. So when we built out our personal injury practice, we decided to go all in on the Hispanic community, both from a marketing standpoint and from a team build out standpoint. So all of our team is fully bilingual. All of our marketing efforts are specifically focused on the needs of the Hispanic community, and it's worked out really well so far.
Amazing. So tell us more about that. So you're half Latino and half, what's the other half?
I'm half Middle Eastern. So yeah,
Half Middle Eastern.
my dad's from Kuwait and my mom's Mexican.
Wow, amazing. That's a very unique blend. So you're in Southern California, you're in Los Angeles. It has one of the largest Hispanic populations in the entire country. I believe Los Angeles is one of the only minority majority areas in the country. So, niching down to Latino speaking communities, we see a lot in the news lately about, obviously the ICE raids, everything's going on with people with immigration status, and even people nowadays that have citizenship or green cards are still somewhat at risk. So how has that influenced how the firm has handled new cases? And have you seen, a dip in people coming forward trying to, actually get what they deserve from their injuries or from their certain situation just because of the fear of certain immigration aspects?
Yeah, that's a great question. We've been fortunate in the sense that we have not seen a decrease in client acquisition or call volume, but anecdotally, just being, around downtown LA, I can tell you that there certainly is a kind of a sense of fear out there in general, right? A lot less people are showing up to their jobs for fear of what may happen. There is a, deep sense of, concern within the community in general. Now, thus far, like I mentioned, it hasn't affected our business call volume, but I could certainly, see, why and how there would be people concerned about pursuing their rights, right? And so, at least for us, there hasn't been that concern, but we certainly get, a lot of people that do call about these types of issues and whether their immigration status affects their rights in a personal injury case, which it does not, by the way. But within the community itself, there is a certain amount of tension that's almost palpable right now.
Okay, let's dive a little bit deeper into that. You touched on a very important point. So, and correct me if I'm wrong. So you made a statement saying that, your immigration status does not affect your case when it comes to a personal injury matter. Let's say if you're injured in a car accident, injured at work, is that the case? And would our audience, if they're looking for a personal injury attorney and maybe they do have some issues with immigration, could they still, seek justice in that way?
They absolutely could. They absolutely could. One's immigration status does not have any impact on their ability to seek compensation for a personal injury claim at all.
Wow.
Zero. Zero.
So you hear that, guys. So whether you're dealing with an immigration status issue or not, if you're injured in a car accident or in any nature, you can still pursue the case and don't be in fear of, what's going on with your immigration status. Justice will be served in that end. Now, that's really powerful. Was there a defining moment, really where you knew that other than the fact that, you're half Latino, you're in a big Latino community, but was there a defining moment where you said, you know what, I'm going to niche down into this focus in my practice and I'm going to make it, the best I can be?
Well, we decided to do that from the very outset. Again, I'm, my office is in downtown LA. I grew up pretty close to downtown LA. So I'm very familiar with the community and the needs of the community. And when we first started our firm, I just realized from the outset that Latinos were really, really underserved, right? Just in general, in terms of legal services, but really in terms of personal injury, right? There was only one other legacy firm that was really focused on the Hispanic community. They're kind of old school, and they knew and believed that if we made our firm very customer centric, meaning built out our team, our processes, and our systems, deliver in a very deliberate way to serve the needs of our target clientele, that we could have a lot of success. Because, I think in legal services, the very first threshold, most important thing that you can do is develop trust with your clients, right? It's the most important thing. If people trust you and they like you, not only are you more likely to convert them as a client, but you're more likely to have a better professional relationship with them. And so those are some, kind of qualitative factors that I knew that, frankly, I had a competitive advantage over a lot of other attorneys in, just based on my background and experience. And we kind of went all in with that, right? We really do still want to give clients the absolute best experience they can have, all the way from intake to dispersal. So the moment someone calls, for example, we have a rule in our law firm that the phone has to be answered within 10 seconds, right? We have spent a lot of time training our intake team on, listening, to clients, hearing them out, getting all the facts of their story, really just listening to people, right? Because people want to be heard when they're going through a legal issue, right? And then being very, very prompt and timely about all communications with clients. If I'm not mistaken, I believe, at least in California, the number one bar complaint made was because of lack of attorney communication. And so that means that there's a lot of attorneys out there that aren't adequately communicating with their clients, which makes people feel uncomfortable and unheard. So we've really doubled down on that and made sure that we communicate with our clients extensively, very extensively, throughout the entire duration of the case, both to hear, how they're doing, how they're feeling, so that we can include that as part of their demand later, but also just so that we're on the same page throughout the entire process and they know that we're consistently there working for them.
Awesome. So let's get to the grind. So you started your firm right out of law school, correct?
I did.
Okay, so that takes a lot of guts. Most people, they clerk with an attorney for a while, then they go to a firm probably straight out of law school. You started your own firm, even though at a time where, there's COVID coming out, there's a lot of things that were volatile around those areas. And I believe in the beginning, you were answering your own phone calls, right? Everybody was calling, you were answering, speaking to the clients themselves, and really building that trust, that confidence. And I think that resonated a lot in how you scaled your firm and made sure that those who work with you also embody that same empathetic, personalized experience. So, a lot of people say people move at the speed of the leader of the company. So if the leader of the company is moving fast or empathetic or personalized or really having a solid approach, it's going to trickle down for the rest of the team. And have you seen that with most of your staff?
Absolutely. And, just to go back to one of the points you mentioned, I did answer the phone for the first couple of years, mainly because I knew how important the intake process was to starting the customer journey off very well. I mean, just if you think about it, right? If there's a restaurant that you want to try or go to and you call and no one answers the phone, that's already a bad experience that you're having.
Absolutely.
For the most part, when someone calls a law office, the first person they would love to talk to is the attorney, right? So when I was building my firm, just to establish a competitive advantage over other firms, right? I knew most firms weren't having a lawyer answer the phone. And so I decided that I would do it for a couple reasons. Number one, to give the best absolute client experience from the outset. And number two, to understand really from a ground level how I could optimize that intake process. So eventually, when I brought other people in, I'm the one that did the training on that. I'm the one that built out the scripts. I'm the one that, kind of utilized my own experience to build out the training materials that we now use with a larger intake team.
See, and most people don't take the time to do that. They rely on other people to do it, and then they wonder why the results generally aren't the way they want it. Because, I mean, to be honest, they're not the ones that created it. But if you're creating the SOPs and you're really putting in that effort and making sure that the training, the scripts are being done, you have more of a control over the direction of where your firm is going to go. And you having that insight and that forethought, has allowed your firm to grow exponentially over the past years. I mean, tell the audience, how much has your firm actually grown since you started to today, percentage wise?
Oh, well, we've grown, I mean, from zero, to basically we've experienced 200% growth year over year. Right. And that's been a function, of course, of, very good SOPs, a very strong team, and very efficient marketing, to be honest with you. It's been really a combination of those three, meaning we have a lot of internal KPIs that we track to ensure that time on desk for each file is optimized. We are very efficient with our marketing spend. Everything that we do is totally digital because if you can't track it, you can't improve it. So I
Mm.
really attribute our growth to, the combination of factors. Those three things, right? Building out a really great team, hiring A players, having, effective SOPs in place, and then really being, tight on the marketing in terms of tracking ad spend and conversion rates and efficiency.
You touched on a very interesting topic that a lot of people in most scenarios they fail to find its importance, right? Marketing, people usually think, hey, that's the revenue generator, that's what's bringing the direct cash into the business. But in reality, I remember our first time talking, you had a very strong emphasis on the intake process. And believe it or not, and I know you're adamant in regards to this, if your intake process is flawed, it doesn't matter how good your marketing is, because it's intake that really takes that thing that you've lined up and it knocks it down. And once you've mastered the art of intake, you can obviously increase your KPIs, your conversion rates go up, your referral rates go up as well, because people end up, you know, liking to work with you. They like the response, they like the attention, they like the fact that, you're there to solve their problem and not, hey, I'll call you back when I get a chance, or you're just a case number or a file on a desk. you know this importance is something that I think a lot of firm owners in the beginning fail to really prioritize. How did you know that intake process was one of the most important feats for the firm?
Well, that's a very good question. I just want to, kind of answer that holistically. Look, customer service is something that we all care about, right? For me, it wasn't an afterthought. It was something that I applied my own experience as a consumer to. And I know as a consumer myself, when I have a very good experience with when I first call a place, whatever kind of business it is, that I'm more likely to spend money at that business. So I applied that same principle to my firm. And I think that, you can agree as well, is that, your customer journey, begins the moment that you call an establishment. So why would that be any different for a law firm, right? And, my thing is if you're going to spend money on marketing, you better be spending as much or more on your reception or intake or whatever you want to call it, right? Because marketing and intake go hand in hand.
Yes, sir.
If your intake process and people aren't rock solid, all the marketing money in the world is going to be wasted. And it's interesting. I've spoken to a couple other, marketing professionals who've told me, look, we've been able to, get really good results in terms of, cost per lead, etc. But then when we do an audit of the law firm's intake process, like, right, they do like a sample call or something like that, the answer rate is subpar, right? And so this is, for any law firm owners out there, I would really encourage you to do a thorough audit or have your director of operations do a very thorough audit of your intake team to make sure that they're operating at the standard that you would operate at if you were answering the phone. And that's something that I'm very proud of, that I think that the folks that we have now have done a fantastic job of doing, right? They operate at the same level that I did when I was doing intake. And now it makes me more confident as a firm owner to go spend more money and allocate more resources to marketing, because I'm confident that on the back end, when someone calls, they're going to have a great experience with us.
And you couldn't have said it better. I mean, marketing, intake, they go hand in hand. It's like lining it up and knocking it down. What we've seen, and I can tell you, in real life experience, I've worked with over 60 law firms. And in reality, I've had firms that I've had to tell them, hey, we no longer are going to be working with you. I don't want to say technically fired them, but we, had an early termination in the contract, because in a performance-based business where we have to rely on pretty much our clients to fulfill that conversion, and we run audits all the time. We usually run an audit in the beginning of the month and the end of the month to make sure that the workflows are still on point. Any updates that need to be done in the integrations are still active. And, so much so that his client acquisition rate went up 3 times and his cost per lead went up 3 times. And it was simply because the same leads were calling back again and again and again and going to the ads. And then eventually they started sending messages and say, hey, I've called 3-4 times. I was trying to get in touch with this guy to have my case. And, when we approached the gentleman about it, he was like, oh, well, they need a call at the right time. And he had a paralegal that refused to make phone calls out. And then she's like, I'll only answer calls from 11 o'clock to 2 o'clock. And I was like, you can't really operate your firm that way if you want your marketing to work, or even if you want your firm to work. And then, for instance, I don't want to talk down to anybody, but this gentleman also was practicing for 40 years. And in that time, he only had one paralegal. He never scaled the firm. He was consistently in a position where he was, scraping money at the end of the month to try to figure things out. And if you look on their daily activities and practices, it'll show you the actual quality of the firm. And your firm has, 200% year after year is an amazing feat. People can't even see that. Most firms don't see that within 5 years. How have you been able to scale your firm, increase your manpower, and still give the same level of quality to all your clients and continuously do that day after day?
Well, I'll tell you, the first thing that comes to mind, honestly, is fearlessness. You can't be scared to grow. I think a lot of lawyers tend to be risk averse types for the most part, right? It's a personality trait, I think, that's common with a lot of lawyers, right? And I think that one of the differentiating factors that allow the firms to scale from the ones that don't is fearlessness. You can't be scared to invest resources in your people. You can't be scared to invest, resources in marketing. But I think that, part of that confidence comes from knowing that you have good systems and processes to bring on more people, right? And so, for example, if your hiring process is like all over the place and it's not streamlined, then it's going to be much more difficult to bring on the appropriate people we need to bring them on. If your training process for a specific position hasn't been, outlined specifically in whatever kind of SOP you have, it's just kind of ad hoc, then you're not going to have the confidence that when you bring someone on, they're going to be able to train them efficiently, right? If you don't have a marketing engine that you can get to consistently cook, then you're not going to feel like you have the consistency of lead generation you're going to need to invest, money today that you might not see for 9 months. But the more that those, foundations are established, the more confidence and fearless you become. So I would really tell you, like the number one, from talking to a number of lawyers, right? The number one attribute really is fearlessness. If you're serious about growth, you're serious about scaling, and you can't be scared to fail. And sometimes you got to
Can't be scared to
you
fail.
can't be scared to fail. Sometimes you got to put a lot on the line, right? Whether it's money or time or, resources, whatever it is, you got to be willing to put it on the line to go big. And if you're not willing to do that, you're not likely going to go big.
A lot of people want to scale a firm and they don't really know how to go forward with it in the beginning because they think it's a matter of, I'm going to bring on cases. And a lot of times, you brought a, very, I guess, relevant factor up, right? Can you hire the people that you need in the time frame that you need it? Is your hiring process, is your training process? Because I've seen so many firms in my experience have an expansion and then a very quick contraction that ends up becoming pretty much disabling them because they get a bunch of clients and now they're scrambling around to try to fulfill the clients. The quality goes down. They hire any paralegal they can find, whoever's the quickest one to take the job, because they're not running it with corporate governance. They're not running it like a well-oiled machine thinking, hey, if I'm bringing in X amount of clients this month, that means I need this much manpower to accommodate it. And especially, you brought up a topic in our first conversation about cash flow with personal injury firms. It's true. As a personal injury firm, when you're getting started, one of the biggest issues is cash flow. If disbursement isn't between 9, 12, 18 months out, how do you manage that growth factor? And I think that is probably one of the reasons, and it fosters so much growth in a personal injury firm, because you have to learn to do the budgeting. You have to learn to, stretch the money out and understand where does it need to be spent, because yes, we're going to get paid, but we also have to make this last for X amount of time and use it wisely. Where, criminal defense, they can, burn some money and then get another client and get a couple $1,000s, and then and it's a little bit quicker. It's less, but how do you handle that when you first started your firm?
Yeah, that's a great question. So look, like you mentioned, like there's ebbs and flows, right? And I analogize starting a personal injury firm to, planting a garden. Okay. So when you first plant the seeds, they're not going to sprout overnight, right? But let's say you're planting a garden because you want to sell the crop, whatever crop it is. Let's say it's corn. Okay. So you go, you buy the farm, you plant all the corn. You're not going to make money for a while, right? And that's something you just kind of have to be, financially and mentally prepared. But the idea is, once you plant the crop and the crop sprouts, let's say 9 months later, now you have crops to sell. And in the meantime, you've been planting more seeds. So over the first like 9 months to a year, you're just planting seeds. You're just planting seeds, planting seeds, planting seeds, planting seeds, planting seeds, right? Once all those seeds have been planted and some start to sprout, then you sell the ones that have sprouted, right? You settle the cases that come in. And then slowly but surely, the cycle catches up with itself. My situation was a little different because I had a multi-practice firm before I just went to PI. I was doing family law as well. So what basically happened is when I went into PI, I didn't go straight in. I gradually went in and phased out my family law practice, which I eventually exited from. But I had the cash flow from the family law side to kind of support me and the firm through the first year of transition. But to be honest with you, Taran, I didn't make money. I didn't make money for at least 15 months in PI, not a dime. And I was spending money every month on marketing, and it was scary. Not gonna lie, man, it was scary.
Yeah.
It was scary. 15 months. My first PI marketing contract was for 50 grand, and I didn't see any fruit from that contract for a year. I thought I got burned.
That's a hard way to go.
50 grand, man, out this first contract, But eventually they came through, and a year later, I started getting a bunch of cases, and here we are. So again, like you just kind of have to believe in the process. You have to believe that you have some type of, and honestly, I felt confident because I felt like we had a really competitive advantage. We were going in to at that time, which was a relatively untapped market. I was slowly building out a team to service our target demographic. So I felt like it was going to work. I believed in it. I believed it was going to work, and eventually it did. But yeah, personal injury is hard. I mean, it's not for the weak of heart, for the faint of heart, right? Because of those like cash flow, ebbs, right? It's not consistent, but that is the nature of the beast. And once you've built out that first, or once you planted those first seeds, eventually you build a farm.
Yeah, and you cycle it out. It's kind of like an investment ladder, And I love the analogy to building a farm because let's say if it takes, 15 months for a case to get dispersed, once it's settled. Well, if you were building cases every month after that, eventually after that pace, you're getting disbursements pretty much every month, every couple of weeks because you're just, working and grinding it that way. And a lot of people need to understand they have to get past, and I think this is a generational thing with the instant gratification, where it's very hard to somebody in this day and age to, think of yourself, for somebody to say, hey, put $50,000 down. You're not investing in anything other than marketing. So at the end of the day, if it doesn't work, you don't have an asset. So it's not like a house that goes foreclosed and you still at least have an asset. It's literally, a very big gamble and say, hey, in 12 to 15 months, you're going to get, reward. You're going to get a return on your investment. And in today's age, people don't even want to buy businesses where they're not, really recouping all their investment within the first 12 to 24 months, let alone, seeing just a little bit back. One of the questions I will have for you is, you mentioned marketing, right? So what marketing have you found to be the most effective in your specific niche, but also as a personal injury attorney?
So I would say one of the most efficient modes of marketing that I think is very often overlooked is local SEO. Local SEO is something that I think that a lot of lawyers and frankly businesses look at as an afterthought, but local SEO optimization has been incredibly fruitful for our firm over the years. And I really think it's something that law firms should take a really good look at to make sure that their local SEO optimization is thoroughly done. And that includes obviously, getting reviews, you know, and having a process for getting reviews on a regular basis, making sure they have a lot of links to local directories, are, engaging with their Google My Business profile. But local SEO still is something that is incredibly valuable to our firm. And I think, again, something that a lot of law firms kind of look as an afterthought.
Well, I think, and that goes back to that statement earlier about instant gratification, right? A lot of people, a lot of attorneys, and I've worked with, like I said, I've worked with a bunch, and generally, first things they always ask is, when can I see results, right? And I believe that most marketing companies end up stuttering in that moment because do they tell them, hey, if we do the SEO correctly for you, local SEO, on page, off page, real SEO, not black hat, not gray hat, it's going to take anywhere between 3 to 6 months to actually start seeing some rankings. And really, you're not going to see the real return on your investment till probably 12 to 15 months later when you're starting to ranking. You're tracking the organic leads that are coming through. You're tracking the traffic in your website. And then, when you leverage it with paid ads, it just makes everything better. But they want to go into paid ads. And the thing is, paid ads are great. Don't get me wrong. They're great if you want, they're very quick at getting clients. But guys, you have to understand it's a very linear investment. If you're looking for exponential growth, exponential returns on your investments, generally PPC is not the way to go. I mean, yes, you can get a 4x, 5x ROAS, 7, 8x ROAS, but SEO, right, is always going to be producing fruit for you. And it's kind of the same farm theory that Mark brought up. Because once you're at the top, once you're ranking, and once you have more keywords ranking that are, search friendly, you're going to get organic leads. Now, yes, you may have spent thousands of dollars for months on it, but if you plan on having a firm for 10, 15, 20, 30, 35 years, being at the top and having that investment and being able to say, hey, we generated 20 clients this month organically, and you put those numbers to the test, SEO is always going to be the highest return on your investment. If we're talking long term, if we're talking short term, yes, PPC might be better, streaming ads might be better. But, I agree with you, Mark. The best results we've seen for any of our firms has been obviously PPC for the short term, but local SEO cannot be beat. Now, do you guys do local SEO also in Spanish or just English?
No, primarily in Spanish.
Okay, very
Yeah.
good. Very good. Awesome. So, with that, where would you say, let's say if another PI firm wanted to connect better with the Latino community, what's one piece of marketing advice you would give to them?
That's a good question. I would say if they want to connect better with the Latino community, start with some direct response ads on Facebook, right? And see how it goes. I mean, easier said than done. But really, I would say, so kind of high level, if you want to see, kind of like dip your toe in and see how it goes, then run some direct response ads. But if you're really serious about it, you have to build out a team, or at least have a few folks on your team that can properly serve the Latino community, right? In a high quality way. Because Latinos tend to be very loyal people, right? If you do a good job for a client, they're inclined to, refer their family, friends, whatever the case may be. So if you're serious about it, then you would want to build out a team, or at least have a few individuals on your team that can really provide that personalized level of care that a Latino person would want and expect, right? That to me, that was our secret sauce. Is we were very, very careful about who we brought onto the team. And one of the big things that we look for, no matter what the role was this person's ability to provide excellent customer service. Because that, at the end of the day, is honestly, like Jeff Bezos says, like, obsession with the customer is number one. If you are obsessed with the customer and the customer experience, and everything kind of flows from a solution standpoint as to what can we do to make the customer experience better, then high level, making sure that you have folks on your team that are relatable to whatever group that you want to market to is going to be number one. And it can be Latino or other groups, right? But there's nothing, no matter what ads you run, there's nothing that's going to replace people having that personalized kind of experience that makes them like and trust your organization.
Well, I mean, of course. I mean, they say, first they have to like you, they have to trust you, they have to have confidence in you, and then you pretty much have the client. And what you're talking about really is knowing your client. At the end of the day, whether you're targeting Latino, whether you're just targeting regular people, American, Black, white, Asian, it doesn't really matter. Know your audience, know who your client is, and understand what is their experience when coming to you. Maybe it's best, I've even told some of my clients, if you really want to know what's going on in your firm, get a friend's cell phone or call it private and call your firm and figure out how the response is. Figure out how long does it take for them to get to you. Let's say I even had a guy one time, he called his own firm, spoke to his own paralegal, had a friend call her, and she's like, okay, I'm gonna tell him right away. Now this person, obviously it was his friend, and they explicitly said, hey, I want to hire this guy. I heard about him, da 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 da. It took her almost 3 hours to send him the message saying, hey, there's this guy that wants to speak to you. He wants to hire you. And he was like, wow. And I was like, yeah, that's the whole concept of missing opportunities. Because if it was a regular lead that came in, right, they would have called another attorney 10 minutes later, 15 minutes later, and that attorney would have gotten in touch with him, and you would have called him 4 hours later. And by then, he would have said, yeah, I already have a consultation with another guy tomorrow. Thank you. And I no longer need your services. So, you've built this powerhouse of a personal injury firm. It's niched down. You weren't scared that you were isolating, a different population of the area. What's the next phase for Broadway Law?
That's a good question. So the next phase for us, I would say, is expanding the scope of our marketing just to add more paid components. We've been testing a lot of creative over the last few months. And so, I think that we have a good sense now of kind of what is converting. And so in terms of growing the firm further, it's really kind of scaling our paid ad spend. Um, you know, and one of the things that we've been able to achieve recently that I'm really proud of is we've built a tool internally to send our offline conversion data back to Meta and Google in real time so that our ads can consistently be optimized. So that's something that I'm really proud of that we've recently built. And, our goal is to go national. I mean, we would really like to go national and focus on areas where there are large Latino populations, continue to provide excellent customer service to the Latino community, and best serve clients, again, by providing that really kind of niche personalized experience.
So what I hear from you is that you're going to be literally the #1 Latino personal injury firm in the country in the next couple of years.
That's the
Correct?
goal. That's the goal.
Okay.
Yeah, to be the go-to.
Go big or go home.
That's it.
Okay. So you talked about, doubling down on the marketing. Now, have you guys ever tried, because a lot of personal injury attorneys, you see personal injury guys all the time. You got bus ads, you got billboards, and you got certain aspects that, generally are more focused on that area of law. What is your take on those type of marketing materials?
Personally, just not a big fan of that. And I think there's a few reasons why. Again, like, top of the funnel marketing, like billboards, bus ads, things like that. That's great if you're like an 800-pound gorilla like Morgan and Morgan, right? And you have a huge ad budget. But I think for me, like if you can't track it, you can't improve it, right? And I see those types of ads more for organizations that are, kind of focused on brand building rather than like client acquisition, right? Our focus has always been kind of middle of the funnel, bottom of the funnel. I think it's more efficient. And especially in, 2025, when there are so many people, using their devices for everything. I think that digital marketing and especially, moving forward, optimizing for AI searches and things like that is really where it's at, right? I read somewhere, SEO is no longer search engine optimization, it's search everything optimization, right? And so just being very, very kind of at the forefront of that, in terms of efficiency and optimization, I am personally not a big fan of top of the funnel marketing like billboards and bus ads, though there is a place for that, right? And there's like certainly nothing wrong with it. I don't see it part of our long-term strategy.
And, touching base on that, I tell most of my clients, that have thought of, most of the times when they talk about having a billboard ad, it's more of an ego thing than it actually is a marketing aspect, because you really, like you said, you can't track the numbers. How do you know where they saw you? And it's mostly for the bigger brands like, Pond Lahaki, Morgan, stuff like that. If you're focusing on the bottom of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, digital conversions that you can track in real time and optimize, because you can't really do anything with these ads, because other than, okay, you drive down the road and hopefully, we know 200,000 people drive past this road a day, you don't really have a good understanding of how to tweak that ad specifically. And when you're doing a digital marketing concept, running a PPC, Performance Max, whatever, it's Meta ads, Instagram, Reel ads, I mean, you name it, you can break it down super granularized to even track their IP addresses through their mobile phones. So you're not only showing up on their phone, but you're showing up on their TV at home, and it kind of follows them throughout. But we're getting towards the end of our podcast. And I'm going to tell you, Mark, I think that in the very near future, your firm is going to be a household name, if it already isn't, throughout the United States for the Latino community. Now, I probably would say, if your goal is to go national, Miami is a very hot market. Obviously, you have Dallas, Houston, San Antonio. But which would be your next stop if you had to choose any one of them?
Probably Arizona, to be honest with you, just from a logistics standpoint, either Arizona or South Texas. Those are our next stops. So those are hotbeds for us, right? Arizona, South Texas. So we're initially planning on focusing primarily on the West Coast, and then slowly, gradually, moving across the country. Obviously,
Southwest.
Miami's great. Yeah, Miami's great. But yeah, we're looking primarily like at the Southwest, or the West Coast rather, and like the Southwest for our initial expansion.
He's got the plan. He's got it all going on. Okay. So last part of this is a lightning round, right? It's kind of just a couple of quick questions. You got quick answers. What's the most meaningful case you've worked on?
A major injury burn case where a guy was burned like from like the neck down, had to jump out of a second story window and was transported by helicopter to a hospital. And we were able to secure him an excellent, excellent outcome at the end. But yeah, very, very serious case that really had a huge impact on his life.
Okay. Biggest legal mistake clients usually make when hiring a personal injury attorney?
Talking to the insurance before they've talked to the lawyer. So the insurance company, third-party insurance company, meaning the insurance for the other side, will often call a client right before they're a client and ask them about the accident, and they'll be usually very nice about it. But what they're doing is they're recording that call, okay? And they're getting what's called a recorded statement from that person. And they will use that recorded statement against someone any way and anytime that they can. The biggest mistake that I've seen is someone or people talking to the other side's insurance company and giving a recorded statement before they've hired a lawyer.
Okay, guys, remember that. Do not speak to the other guy's insurance company until you have a lawyer. Okay, another question. Advice you'd give your younger self right after law school on what to do.
Number one trade for hiring. Number one trade for hiring. Number one trade for hiring. It's reliability. It is. I've had to learn that the hard way, right? And now it's either a hell yes or a hell no. When you hire someone, the first thing that I ask myself and the first thing that I evaluate for is this person reliable? Can I delegate a task to someone and feel confident that it's going to get done 100% all the time? And if it's a hell yes, they stay. And if it's a hell no, they go. Right. And kind of the corollary to that I would say that I've learned is hire fast and fire faster.
Hire fast, fire faster. You couldn't have said it better. I mean, training and hiring people, it's an art in some way, And, I once heard a saying that, it's the B level people that are going to kill your business, because the A level, you know who they are. And the C's, you know who they are. It's the B's that have potential but never actually reach it, that you feel, okay, they can do better. They can do better. I know they're smart. I know they're capable. But you end up spending so much time hoping that one day they'll blossom that eventually you end up firing them. And it's like, okay, those are the people that really kill your business, because it's just, that's just the nature of the beast.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, what is your favorite way to recharge after a tough week?
Steam and sauna. That's my go-to. Steam and sauna. So spa services, man. But I'm a big fan of the steam and sauna. I'm fortunate enough actually to live in a building right now where I have a steam and sauna in my building. But traditionally, yeah, it's really nice. But steam and sauna really are my go-to.
All right, Mark, this has been amazing. Your commitment to your clients, your community, and your team really shines through. For anyone listening who might need legal support that's in Los Angeles, the Southern California area, how can they get in contact with you and Broadway Law?
They can hit me directly on our office line. That's 213-444-3155. They can visit us online at www.broadwaylaw.com, or they can hit me on the DM. And the DM, my handle is MyLawyerMark on all channels.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. So reach out to Mark if you need a personal injury attorney, if you're in Southern California, if you're Latino, or even if you're not. This is the guy to go to. He's going to do you the best he can. His team is full of integrity. They're winners. They're not losers. And they're here to stay. For everyone tuning in, if this episode moved you, share it with a friend, especially someone who may need legal help but doesn't know where to turn. Leave us a 5-star review. Help us grow this movement, support and educate, and bring justice to those who need it. Until next time, keep building, stay empowered, and know your rights. Thank you, guys.
Cool, brother. Perfect. I appreciate it, man. I appreciate the time. Thank you. It was a pleasure being on your podcast.
Awesome. Well, until then, I'm going to send you an email shortly, and you have a great day.
You too, man. Take care. Have a nice weekend. Have a holiday weekend.
Have a nice holiday. Have a good one.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Own your growth. Scale with systems powered by GrowthX. Subscribe to Success in Excess for those who lead with precision and scale with purpose.